love these town hall meetings because it just emphasizes the fact that it's all about community. And this is really, really good. So thank you very much for coming out here. We've got all different types of dynamics and different visions trying to figure out how we can help our youth. So that's why I'm here to talk to you about safety planning. I always mess up with this clicker, so I apologize. I don't know what up is down and what down is up. They know it too. Okay. All right, I think I got this. So safety planning. When we think about our youth, actually before I start that, sorry. So as you some of you all know now, like I'm from Toronto housing. I grew up with a lot of violence. I've seen a lot of stuff I probably shouldn't have seen. I'm pretty sure that a lot of the youth that I grew up with had PTSD in their neighborhoods just based on a whole bunch of stuff that they saw and they experienced. And we always talk about, or adults always talk about how hard they had it, but with our youth now, with the emergence of social media and everything else, like they see so much stuff, they're exposed with so much stuff, and the problems that we have is, especially teenagers, if you think about a typical teenager, how old are you? 16, okay. So you could have a 16-year-old or what have you who is always tired, sometimes not too social, attitude, you name it, disassociated from things. So sometimes when we see that, it's like, oh, they're just being a typical teenager. But sadly, what that also can be is that child is suffering from PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. But we don't recognize that. We just assume that everything is okay and they're just being regular teens. So with me, like I said, I had a lot of the risk factors growing in. I grew up in a house that was riddled with a lot of violence, a lot of abuse, mental health issues. My mom I'm pretty sure is bipolar. Haven't talked to my mom in 12 years. My dad's around, but not. So there's another aspect. So you think about all these different things, right? And for me to get out of my situation, I legitimately had to count on a lot of people and really believe that I could do it. And I talk to a lot of youth about it, and I call it changing your algorithm. Any youth you see in Toronto housing or is around violence all the time, a lot of our youth already in their mind have how each situation is going to play out. So if they go to school late and they come in and they're known to be late, they know usually that the teacher is going to be upset, they're going to be in trouble, probably detention, go see your principal, whatever. They just know, they walk in. But when you think about it, it's like, what do you know about that kid's life? Because I remember I was that kid. I'd be late sometimes because my mom would tell me that, hey, I'm going to take the subway to work today, but I might not make it because I might kill myself. Okay. So I would wait around for a phone call from my mom until she got to work, and I was like 8 years old. So sometimes you just don't know what the kids are going through, but you just assume because you think it's conduct disorder, when really this kid, you have no idea what's going on. So when I say change your algorithm, it's something like this. So this kid comes in, maybe has a new haircut, maybe something, right? This is just an example. And you're like, oh, Chuck, you good? Yeah, nice haircut. Okay. And then Chuck will probably sit down and go, what was that, right? And then he's not singled out. And then the teacher after comes around and says, you know what, you good? And he'd be like, yeah. And he's like, okay. That moment possibly changed that kid's algorithm, because the expectation that he thought that was going to happen didn't happen. And it takes all of us to do that. Now, the problem with this, because there's a problem, is now my background is all youth mental health, like severe youth mental health, like kids who could not be situated with other kids or other community members because of how violent they were and how bad their situations were. You think being a cop is tough? Working as a social worker or youth social worker with severe mental health, the only thing that you have is your gift of gab. You're listening. You got to be resourceful, right? Now with these kids, has anyone heard of like a wraparound meeting? Anyone heard of that before? I know you have, right? And wraparound meetings, you have everybody who is invested in this kid's life, right? So you'd have sometimes correctional workers, you'll have social workers, you'll have CAS, CCAS, teachers, anyone and everyone who thinks that they can possibly figure out a safety plan for this youth to be successful. And think about that. Kids will be successful when they are safe, when they are supported. if they do not feel that in their general situation, it could be at home, in their community, they're going to look at other places. We call them gangs, they call them family. So the problem that I'm saying that we have, and I've lived it, is that we wait for the most severe thing until we get involved with the youth. So this severe kid who's going through so much has a wraparound team that's looking into how we can make this kid successful through safety. But how often do we do that for just the youth in our neighborhood? And that's why I was saying it's on every single person here to make sure that that kid is successful. You see a kid who never wants to talk to you, be like, hey, what's up? Just simple words, right? Not one entity can help our youth. Not one entity or group can change their algorithm. They have to get different messages from everybody. So with me, I have been arrested by the division I work for. I have been investigated. I have been beaten up. I have been, you name it. And not only on the police side, but even neighbors, people in my neighborhood who were in particular gangs, I got jumped by them because they thought I was from a rival gang, and I was coming back from basketball tournaments, right? I was associated with a lot of gang members, and I really legitimately thought I was not going to get in Toronto policing because of my association. I think one of the reasons I did is because there was a huge gap from when I was 18 to when I was 32 when I got on. I'm 43 now. So I think because I had disassociated myself for so long, they're like, okay, those associations don't exist. But the benefit was that I understood the culture, I understood these neighborhoods, I knew what was criminal, and I knew what was not. And that was really good to show other police officers who were not familiar with Toronto, who were not familiar with Toronto housing, going into situations saying, we need to investigate that guy. I'm like, well, why? They're just playing dominoes. Yeah, but there's open liquor. I'm like, are you serious? I'm like, now, me, being a black male officer coming back into Toronto housing, a lot of people on the service would think, oh, you're going to be good because, well, you fit in. Are you kidding me? I got called Uncle Tom. I got called traitor. I get called all that stuff. But like my man said here, despite all that stuff, I don't take it personal. You'll barely see me get riled up about anything. Because just like you said, when you come in and you are successful, and you've gone through challenges, you're showing that youth something different that they can aspire to. So despite the negativity from a very select few people, everyone else sees something different. And me coming into this youth's life or person's life is also changing their algorithm because they are already set on how they think their life is going to go, right? So, communication. We all suck at it, I'm sorry. And it goes from schools, it goes to police officers, it goes to community members. We're terrible, and I will say that straight up. For instance, Ron and I did a talk, and we spoke to one of the schools in Scarborough, and I remember one teacher saying to us, it's like, hey, we only start to figure out what's up with this kid when you guys get involved. And I said, hold on a sec, pump your brakes. Actually, if you think about it, this kid from the second he or she starts. One thing. You see their behaviors, you see their mannerisms, you see who their siblings are, you see who their friends are, you see how they communicate with each other, you see all that. The time we get involved is when it becomes that it's possibly criminal. So we come in there as the heavy hand when realistically, if there was better communication between the schools and police officers, sharing information, I'm not saying that we could avoid that situation, but we could definitely kind of put things in place where we could help that youth 100%. Because if you are just even keeping notes and saying, you know what, just talking to this kid and kind of recognizing certain things, this is what I see as risk factors for this kid. Then you get a police officer who is involved, who wants to do something. Then you start to get resources because there's resources in the schools and officers also have our own resources. Why not pull them together, right? To me, that's just common sense, but it's not happening because everyone wants to deal with it on their own until it gets too big. And now it's your problem. That's what we do, right? So it's that whole communication part. And Ron's touched on this before. Shooting in the neighborhood, someone in the neighborhood knows who shot that person's son. Someone knows it. No one's saying anything. So not only there is a distrust with the justice system, There's a mistrust in your own neighborhood because you can't trust people because people are dying in your neighborhood, being shot in your neighborhood. No one wants to say anything. But yet we call ourselves community. That was so frustrating. Even for me, I lost a lot of friends to gun violence. I've had a gun to my head, you name it. I've had it all. It's not fun. So our communication has to be broadened. If we are going to change this kid's algorithm, guy, girl, whatever, every single person has a part. You don't have to be a police officer. You don't have to be a teacher or a principal. You just have to be a concerned citizen that is willing to give something else. If you need to see a difference, you got to be the difference. That is it. You got to look within and say, what am I doing, before you look at anybody else and say, what are they doing or what are they not doing? That's a fact. Consistency. So now you're doing all this stuff and you have this communication, and now we're communicating and so on and so forth. We just don't communicate on one situation where this kid was in trouble, we all get together, we're high-fiving because we have this plan and it's super great, and then the next day and the next week, this kid barely sees us. What is the message we just gave that kid?
Get attention when you do wrong.
Exactly. That is it. So what do you think this kid is going to do? Right? And it's not saying it's always easy to do, especially as police officers, because we have other things that we need to do. We need to go to different calls. We need to do our paperwork and everything. It is really hard for us to get to see a child when we want to. So I know with my case, if I can't get somewhere, I make a phone call. And I call the administration and say, hey, is so-and-so there? Can I talk to him? Just to check in, see how his day is. What's your roles? What's your thorn for that day? I've done that with kids. They have to tell me something positive and something negative that happened in their life, right? Seeing the youth absolutely helps. Teachers connecting with the youth, reaching, it's just simple things. How is your day going? What's going on? You've got to show consistent care or it's just not going to work. Because the only way you're going to change their algorithm, which is strong, it has to be through consistency, which starts with communication. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, good. So, communication and consistency equals success. Because now this young man, young female, whatever, knows that people actually do care about them. People are showing that they want to be consistent. They want to be consistently in their lives. It doesn't always have to be parents. Parents aren't always the greatest. I didn't have parents that were the great. I had to find my own family. So it always doesn't have to be the people who you think it is. It could be anybody who is invested to making sure you succeed. But we have to have all of this, because all of this creates safety. And people think, react, and do better when they feel safe. If people feel safe, they feel loved. If people feel safe, they feel supported. For instance, I do a lot of stuff on social media, and a lot of youth who are having issues at home or in their community, they reach out to me, just like they reach out to Ron. So I'll talk to community members and I'm like, look, I'm a police officer. Why is your youth who is in trouble reaching out to me than you? That's a problem. As much as I think it's great and I love to do it, it's a problem, right? So once again, I'm just saying, to create this safety plan for everybody, you just need the consistency, communication to create success, to make them feel safe. But that is everybody's responsibility, not just one.